Affairs don't begin in the bedroom, they begin in childhood. In the part of you that decided she needed to bury her truth just to be loved. The part that's now screaming to be seen. I'm Alex Croxford, and this is the Deeper Love podcast, where we name the shame, face the guilt, and help you find your way back to yourself. So let's begin. So I wanted to address the question. I know my wound, I know my patterns, so why do I keep repeating them? Why am I still here? Because I've had quite a few women in my space who have had more than one affair, or they have found themselves cheating on their partner more than once. And a lot of these women, like so many women already in my space, have had therapy. And through therapy, they've been able to see their patterns that keep playing out. Perhaps they keep finding themselves in the same kind of relationships and they can't understand why when they already know what they do. Why do I keep finding myself in other affairs when I know X, Y, and Z? When I know that I'm not going to be chosen, I'm never going to feel like I belong, I'm always going to be the secret, and I know how painful that is. So why on earth do I keep doing it? And the thing that I want to make really clear is that just because we have insight on our patterns, we might even further have insight into our wounds. So we might know, oh, yes, I experienced a very distant and emotionally detached mother. And I know that I now attract emotionally distant and unavailable partners. Okay, so we might know that. So why then do we still do it? And the truth is that awareness is just not enough. It is definitely the first step. Seeing and becoming aware of your patterns is 100% the first step to any kind of change. However, knowing just isn't enough. If it was that easy to be able to see our relational patterns and stop them, then I wouldn't have a job. And the world would be a lot happier, a lot more at peace, a lot calmer, because everybody would be breaking free from these very painful love situations that they find themselves in. There would probably be a lot less affairs if this was the case too. So let me explain a little bit about why knowledge is not enough or insight is not enough. We constantly, as humans, live through stored expectations. In psychology, it's known as predictive processing. So we are always looking for what we already know, what's familiar, what we've experienced before. So this isn't us actively choosing another affair, another situation in which we are the side piece, the one that doesn't belong, the one that has to be the secret, because you would not consciously choose that because you know how painful it is. But our conscious minds, which is the part of our brain which makes the decision to do something. So it might be, I am not going to have another affair because I do not want to create more pain in my marriage. I do not want to be someone's side piece again. I do not want to destroy my life. Your conscious brain has made that decision. But unfortunately, our conscious brain only, and there's studies done on this, our conscious brain only operates or only leads us 5% of the time. The remaining 95% of the time, We are run by our unconscious minds. And unconscious minds are where we have all of these stored expectations. Our unconscious minds are where we carry wounds from the past, and our unconscious mind is what creates our current reality. So, annoyingly, our body recreates what it recognizes. And so, if you had a childhood in which you didn't feel chosen, and I'm talking from the ages of 0 to 7, perhaps there were very teeny tiny moments that you cannot even remember where you did not feel chosen. I'll give you an example. If you were an eldest sibling, when your younger sibling came along, there will have been a moment in which your parents could no longer give you as much attention as they had given you up until that point. And a child does not have a rational mind to say, it's okay, I'm 4 and my baby sister is a newborn. And now mummy and daddy have a lot more on their plate than they had when it was just me. And so therefore, I can allow them to go and look after my newborn sister whilst I take on a little bit more maturity and have to look after myself a little bit more because mummy is really busy breastfeeding and daddy is really busy trying to look after mummy. No 4-year-old does that. What that child does, remember this in your conscious mind, but it will create a story. And that story that they've created about this situation is almost to protect them from the heartbreak that they are feeling because mummy and daddy are no longer as present for them. So the heartbreak would probably be not having all of your needs met. If baby is crying and needs feeding versus the 4-year-old in that moment, mummy is going to have to choose the newborn because the newborn can't look after itself as much as the 4-year-old. And so in this moment, the mother goes to the baby and the 4-year-old experiences a lot of pain. Ow, like that really hurts that mummy, who I love with all of my heart, has chosen someone else over me. And that is so heartbreaking because the child has no concept that that newborn has more needs in that moment than her, that child is going to have to somehow compute the pain, compute the heartbreak that is experiencing. So what that child does is it creates a story all in their unconscious mind about what's happening in this moment. And so this pain of not feeling chosen in this moment would normally come with a story of, oh, okay, so I'm not chosen in this moment, probably because I'm not good enough or I don't matter. And the child has to make it about themselves because it's too painful for them to think that it's the parent, that there's something wrong, in inverted commas, with the parent. And so this child now is experiencing the heartbreak at this experience of not feeling chosen. It creates the story, well, in that moment, I was not chosen probably because I don't matter. So now this child has the wound plus the story. And if a child believes that she doesn't matter, she will begin to put herself at the bottom of the pile. She will begin to learn to disappear so that she can stay attached. Because as she's witnessing right now, mummy has to prioritize another child And so therefore I will just diminish myself. I will just make myself smaller and smaller and smaller and almost have no needs. In fact, I'm going to become really strong and really independent. I don't need anyone, because if I need people, they will let me down. So this child has the wound, it has the story, and now it has the way it thinks it needs to be in order to be loved. A wounded child that's not chosen, a story that I don't matter, and now I'm going to become the strong, independent woman who doesn't need anyone. And so all of this pain and all of these stories are stored in the unconscious. And they are, as we discussed earlier, running the show 95% of the time. 5% of the time is you making the decision that you no longer want to be operating in the same way, in these patterns and from these wounds. So when we hear that all we need to do is do something different, or we try and force ourselves to not fall into the same trap that we always do, we continuously feel disappointed. We shame ourselves. Why can I not get this right? Is there something wrong with me? Am I broken? And it just compounds the shame and the belief that there's something wrong with us. And that's the biggest problem in the personal development industry, is that it's mind shifts, affirmations, which is all in the cognitive mind. And that's all we need to worry about. But the truth is that we cannot just do something differently because we know our patterns. It's like someone with only 5% strength competing against someone with 95% strength. Not really sure if that metaphor works, but it's like a teeny tiny little woman trying to push up against an absolute brick house of a bodybuilder. So just knowing it doesn't change anything. And every time we just try to do something like create more boundaries, or we try and be more strong or more resilient, or we try and stand in front of the mirror and tell ourselves affirmations over and over again, this doesn't work, because you are just trying to put a plaster over a very deep wound that is still running your life. And so what actually changes the pattern or changes the loop? The only way that we can really do this is we turn towards the very young part that carries the wound of not feeling chosen. And we don't make her wrong, because right now she is just terrified that she will never be chosen. And she's almost cowering in the corner, so very hurt, heartbroken. And then there are other parts of you who decided, well, I'm going to protect this little one, this very hurt, wounded inner part, by becoming the strong, independent woman who doesn't need anything. And so these parts, if you imagine they're kind of getting their armor out, so they've got their shield and their sword and their full suit of armor, and they are going to do absolutely everything that they can to try and protect this very wounded inner child that never feels chosen. And so how they begin to try and protect her is, well, if I'm wounded because I'm not chosen and I don't matter, then I am going to have to be someone that never needs anybody else. So it's almost like you've got these other, tiny weeny, let's say 4-year-olds that are wounded, plus your 7-year-olds that are now armored up, trying to be the independent one, because when we do need anyone, we get hurt and we get rejected. They're running the show. But it's also very, very familiar for you to not feel chosen. And so you'll probably have the mixture of the very hyper independent, I've got this, I don't need anyone, and then the part of you that feels like it would be so alien to actually be chosen. I have to choose men that can never choose me. And so when we start to meet our inner parts, we begin to meet the parts of ourselves that believe we have to be hyper independent in order to survive in the world. We have to let them know, you can step aside now. You don't have to run the show anymore. And then we have to meet the younger, wounded part. That one who believed she was never chosen, that she never belonged. And we have to let her know that she is chosen. She does belong. And not to anyone else, but to you. Because you are now the mother. You are now responsible for that younger inner part. And it's not her fault and it's not your fault what happened to you, but it's your responsibility to heal from it. And so we have to create an environment, a safety for this young part. We have to let her know that you choose her now and you're never going to abandon her again. And the more that you do that, the more that you're able to create the safety for this wounded inner part, the less likely she is to be running the show anymore. Because when she's found safety, you, as the adult, won't be interested in unsafe situations anymore. It won't feel good to you. Because right now, even though it's so uncomfortable to not be chosen, it's also really comfortable. You don't know what it feels like to be truly chosen. In fact, that probably feels terrifying to your system, because being chosen means you have to be seen. It means you have to be vulnerable. It means you have to be open. It means you have to risk your heartbreak again. And the thing about affairs is often, initially, we feel so chosen, like liberated. Oh my gosh, this person sees me. I feel emotionally connected. I feel free. I feel alive. I feel like somebody finally sees me. And it was almost in that moment that that part felt like she was chosen. But again, what happened is you've unconsciously chosen somebody who could never choose you. And so that's why affairs feel so intense and so incredible at the time. Like finally, this younger part has been rescued by this man or woman. And I feel, oh, my life has completely changed. And then as it goes on, and as it goes on, we realize, oh, I'm still not going to be chosen by this person. And so the woman who is finding herself in the repeated pattern of choosing unavailable men who can never choose her doesn't need to know any more about her pattern and about how she got here. She has to start to create a new relationship with all of her parts. She has to become the mother to the wounded inner child that she is currently carrying. The more that that child knows that she belongs, the more that child knows that she's chosen, the less you are going to find yourself in the same situations, choosing people that will never choose you. If you see yourself in this, if this is a mirror in some way, and you are looking for a space to be held as you begin to explore who you are beneath all of these patterns, beneath all of these ways of being, then the next step would be for you to join the sanctuary. If insight alone could have changed this, it would have already. And change happens when the nervous system learns that it doesn't have to survive anymore. So the affair wasn't proof that you didn't know enough and that you weren't aware enough. It was proof that knowing wasn't giving you what you actually needed. And so if you're ready to change that, the invitation is to step inside the sanctuary where you will be met just as you are, and you will begin your journey home to yourself, one step at a time. Thank you for listening to the Deeper Love podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're ready to go deeper, you'll find all the ways to work with me in the show notes. Until next time.